Hey, I'm Ace Austin, and you're watching Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR.
Roll Tide and welcome to this Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. This is Roger Hoover. Great to be with you from beautiful Greenville, South Carolina. Got Falls Park on the Reedy River just behind me as the backdrop. A scene just outside my hotel room here in downtown Greenville, South Carolina. Great to be here once again for the SEC Women's Basketball Tournament. That will certainly be part of the focus of our show today. Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. We'll start our show by taking a look at what's coming up, plus our headlines thanks to our friends RJ Young. RJ Young is the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. Let's see what's coming up on the show today. First of all, we'll visit with Wyatt Fulton from Tide 100.9. Great thoughts from him on Alabama football practice that will begin on Monday for the Crimson Tide. So a great breakdown of some of the key storylines he's taking a look at coming up for spring practice for Kalen DeBoer and the Tide on the football field, plus some thoughts on Alabama men's basketball as well. Then we'll take a look back to the women's basketball win on Wednesday night here in Greenville against Missouri with some courtside cam highlights, as well as Kelly Curry joining us postgame on the radio. Assistant coach, his wife Christy, had some media obligations with the SEC, as she always does for the SEC tournament, but great thoughts from Kelly Curry to close out the show as we think about what's ahead for Alabama women's basketball. With our headlines, taking a look at the men's team, unfortunately the Crimson Tide had their winning streak come to a close on Tuesday, falling by 10 points on the road against a very good Georgia team that'll be in the NCAA tournament down the road, as the loss does end an 8-game winning streak for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now here we are. It's the first week of March, one more game left in the regular season. Alabama against Auburn coming up at 7:30 in Tuscaloosa. Our coverage from Coleman will begin at 6:30 all across the network. It is going to be senior night. We are going to be honoring Latrell Wrightsell Jr., Houston Millett, and Noah Williamson as well for the Crimson Tide. So great honors for those guys coming up, great recognition. Hopefully all the fans will stick around and enjoy the senior night festivities coming up in Tuscaloosa, and then we'll be talking about the SEC tournament for the men's team coming up next week in Nashville. But the women's team here in Greenville, South Carolina earned the number 11 seed for this tournament and defeated the number 14 seed Missouri Tigers 65-48. Only a 4-point lead for Alabama going into the fourth quarter, and then Ace Austin decided ball game's over. She made the first 9 points for Alabama on 3 3-pointers in the first just minute plus, really, of the fourth quarter. Missouri had to call a timeout. Ace Austin with a great moment there for the Crimson Tide. Ended up making another 3-pointer, another basket after that. 14 points leading the way for the Crimson Tide, all in the fourth quarter. Great to see that on a night where maybe the offense wasn't flowing like Alabama wanted at times. It was a tough night shooting for Jessica Timmons and Carly Weathers. But they'll try and get in gear tonight, because now it's Alabama against the 6th-seeded Tennessee Lady Volunteers, once again playing the late game, not only tonight, but also if Alabama advances to take on the number 3 seed Texas Longhorns, then Alabama would be as well, coming up at 7:30 p.m. Central. Radio coverage from here in Greenville the next two nights at 7:15 all across the network. For the softball team, everyone excited to see what Patrick Murphy and Team 30 can do as they hit the road to Oxford, Mississippi for the start of a 3-game series, Alabama against Ole Miss. Best of luck to the undefeated Crimson Tide, heading on the road to begin SEC play. For the baseball team, midweek wins at home against Jacksonville State in a tight ball game on Tuesday, and then a strong showing against Alabama State on the road in Montgomery on Wednesday night. Now this weekend, it's the final full series that Alabama will play in non-conference play, with the Crimson Tide hosting North Florida. We'll have radio coverage coming up all across the network for Alabama and UNF. Some other final notes around Crimson Tide athletics. The gymnastics team will be home against Kentucky coming up on Friday night. 6:30 will be the start time for Alabama against UK. Swimming and diving team are sending 10 Crimson Tide swimmers to the NCAA Championships. More info available on that, RolledTide.com. And then final notes, more info available through Yay Alabama for champagne and shoulder pads. It is coming back in April. We're looking forward to a great event, the Women's Clinic for Alabama football. Again, register with our friends at Yay Alabama for champagne and shoulder pads. With that, we're talking football here on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Wyatt Fulton does a great job covering Crimson Tide football as a show host on Tide 100.9 and the brand manager, always writing great articles on the Tide 100.9 website, our flagship affiliate of the Crimson Tide Sports Network. He joins us now to break down what's coming up for the Crimson Tide football team as practice is just around the corner in Tuscaloosa. Wyatt, it's great to see you. How are you doing with all these sports starting to overlap here in Tuscaloosa right now?
It's a lot of fun. Busiest time of the year. I know football takes a lot of attention, takes the majority of the attention in the fall, but you got a lot of great sports here in the spring that require that much attention to detail as well. So, been a lot of fun, but exhausted as well.
Yeah, welcome to March, as they say. So here we go, starting to dive into Crimson Tide football. First of all, we'll talk about that with you because for the Tide 100.9 website, you've had some great previews over this week or just big questions that are kind of on your mind. First with the offense, then with the defense. But let's dive in first to your piece on the Alabama offense and the questions you have as we get ready for practice to start next week.
Yeah, obviously the big storyline everyone's going to pay attention to is that quarterback battle between Austin Mack and Keelan Russell, two very talented players that, you got to see in spurts last season, a couple of late season efforts there from Austin Mack with the injury to Ty in the Rose Bowl there. But I'm really excited about this competition because these are two guys that Kalen DeBoer went out, recruited, got to his program, and it's now their battle. I know they both competed with Ty Simpson last season, but it's between really and truly those two here in spring and fall camp there. So seeing those guys compete, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And from what we've seen in limited reps from both, it should be a really good battle, and Alabama's in good hands either way.
Yeah, they really are. And should fans really even read too much into what happens this spring to determine who's that first starter going to be? Or we have seen before, it can change during the season as well. But how would you advise fans to kind of be watching some of these reports from you and your counterparts in the media about how the quarterbacks are faring?
Kalen DeBoer told us last season with the quarterback battle, somebody had to step out there for day one, right? So, and that happened to be Ty Simpson last year. And so I wouldn't read too much into anything, reps with the ones in spring practice, media is only able to view or get so much stuff. We're not there for the entire time, obviously. And so I wouldn't read too much into it. Even when we get to, A-Day and that event there, whether it be, a game or kind of an open practice type thing like it was last year, I still wouldn't read too much into it. Last year, all three got reps with the quote unquote first string offense during A-Day last year. So, but this is going to be like I said, it's going to be a really fun battle as we kind of dive into spring practice and then go through summer workouts and fall camp as well. My expectation is we won't get any sort of answer coming out of spring ball. I know Ryan Grubb kind of shocked everybody last year with the if we play a game today, Ty is the starter. Would be kind of cool to see if somebody got that endorsement this year. But again, two really talented guys, and I think Bama's in good hands either way.
So it'll be a fun battle to watch as we go throughout the spring and obviously later on into the summer, right before the first game as well. But also somebody has to protect Austin Mack or Keelan Russell, and that job falls to the offensive line. Just what do you think we are learning about this offensive line first as it comes together on paper, and then we get to see it on the field next week?
I've been really excited for Adrian Clem coming over from USC there. I think he was a really good addition to the staff there. And then it's going to be tough regardless, replacing guys like Caden Proctor, Parker Brailsford, and the guys that started on that line last year. But you're losing a lot of guys that played on that offensive line last year. And so bringing in the talent that you brought in, it creates really good competition and iron sharpening iron there. And it allows you to be versatile in a lot of different spots, right? Nick Brooks, the transfer from Texas, had experience at right guard and right tackle and both guard positions there. Caden Strayhorn can compete at center and at both guard spots there. Ty Haywood's another really good player that maybe can kick inside and can also compete at left tackle there. So in addition to the guys that Alabama, brought in via the recruiting class and stayed on the roster from last year, you're bringing in really good competition. And so that's what you really want to see is those guys go out there, battle for these spots. But I'm excited about the trajectory of this offensive line as we get ready for spring practice.
Competition there, new talent there. The same could be said about the Alabama running back room, along with some familiar faces from last year. What'd you learn about that group?
I liked what we saw in spurts last year from a guy like Daniel Hill. I thought AK Deer in the limited reps he had looked really, really explosive. And then if you keep up with high school recruiting, EJ Crowell is somebody that everybody in the state of Alabama has been super excited about for a while now. So can one of those guys separate, or is it going to be kind of that running back by committee because all three bring something different? And forgive me, I didn't even mention Kevin Riley, who was really good to start the season last year for Alabama. So all four of those guys bring something different to the table. How is Alabama going to be able to kind of handle and work through that there? Hill with the power, Deere's got incredible speed. Riley's able to is a really good pass catcher out of the backfield, and then EJ Crowell as well with that breakaway speed. So can any of them really separate with their skill set, or is it going to be, hey, we're on the goal line, let's put in Daniel Hill. Hey, we need to get burst to the outside to that hip at the tackle. Maybe we do put in AK Deere in that situation. So excited to see those guys kind of go through that battle as well.
So that's on the offensive side of the ball. Where'd you start on defense when you started to think about some questions you had for this Alabama team entering spring ball?
For me, it starts in that linebacker room just because replacing Deontay Lawson, Justin Jefferson, and Nakai Hill Green, three guys who played really high level football for Alabama last season. Uh, I'm really interested to see who kind of steps up in those spots. I know Woodson, the transfer from Virginia Tech, was a starter for the Hokies last season. And then you had, QB Reese, Caden Jones, who kind of played for Alabama in some spots last season as well. So is Alabama going to continue that rotation, number one, with three inside linebackers there? And if they are, who are the three? I think, QB Reese put some good things out there last season. Caden Jones, even though he dealt with injury, was able to work his way back there late in the year. And then can that transfer step in Woodson from Virginia Tech? Or is it maybe Abdul Sanders or Duke Johnson? And where does Xavier Griffin fit in a lot of this stuff? He's a very versatile guy. I've talked with people and they think he can be kind of that Jahad Campbell type of role where he's playing an inside, but he can kick down and rush the passer as well. He did do that in high school. So can he kind of crack that rotation there when it comes to the linebacking core? And then the defensive line as well is something I'm keeping an eye on because Tim Keenan was a huge, huge piece to this defense for so long here. You're losing a guy like that. LT Overton off to the NFL as well. You're losing some starters in that defensive front there. So again, good reps from London Simmons last year, good reps from some other guys in some other areas. I like the retention of Jeremiah Beeman on that defensive line. Only played in that Florida State game before suffering a season-ending injury, but a lot of really, really good guys that flashed. I would like to see them build on that performance from last year and continue the consistency that we saw in 2025.
So let's look at the linebackers, the defensive line, then the back end of the secondary. There are a lot of familiar faces there for this Crimson Tide team. Is that really a position of strength for Alabama entering next year?
I thought it was arguably their best unit last year, and I think that unit should be the best unit this year for Alabama. Xavier Brown, he's one of the more underrated cornerbacks in college football. I think he's only been named All SEC freshman team, hasn't earned any other recognition, whether that be All American or All SEC. I don't know how because he's been a lockdown corner for the Tide for 2 seasons here, but he's back. He's that staple there in that cornerback room, and then moving to the other side, Dejon Lee looked really, really good in points last season. He's got great length, great size, and Alabama can really benefit from having a guy like him out there on the field with the elite talent that he is. And then that safety duo there, Bray Hubbard, Keon Sabb. I thought outside of maybe Yonze Pierre, like Bray Hubbard was the biggest retention for Alabama, making sure he came back for his final season in Tuscaloosa. So seeing that secondary there, I expect that to be a very strong unit next season or in 2026 for Alabama. Red Morgan at the Husky spot there. And then you weren't just complacent with what you had talent wise, right? You brought in Zion Gibson, Jordan Edmonds, Jira Edwards there as well. And then you even went out and got a Carmelo O'Neal in the transfer portal. So continuing that competition in that secondary there, I think is going to be massive. And Coach Womack's not afraid to rotate guys in and around there. So I do think you see some guys maybe pop up in that secondary, maybe not early, but throughout the course of the season as they get familiar with Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, depth is certainly going to be important. So you're going to be keeping an eye on Alabama football over the next few weeks as spring practice begins next week. And obviously, we're all following this Crimson Tide men's basketball team that have been on such a roll prior to Tuesday night with the Crimson Tide having a loss against Georgia. What stood out to you from that ball game? What are you kind of expecting from Nate Oates and the Tide getting ready for Saturday against Auburn?
I wasn't overly surprised by the loss to Georgia. They've got good players, obviously, on that roster. They're an NCAA tournament team, especially after that Tuesday night victory there. It was just a weird spot in the schedule, right? You're coming off, the win streak there after you lost to Florida at the start of February there. You had the big emotional physical win against Tennessee on Saturday. You've got the matchup with Auburn on Saturday coming up in the final game of the regular season. So you've been through the grind of the regular season. Now you're playing in a weird environment. Stegman Coliseum is a strange place to go play, as we saw on Tuesday night. So I'd rather, looking at it from this perspective, I'd rather have the loss now than see that that kind of down game happen later in the month of March. So LeBaron Philon's been absolutely phenomenal. We're not breaking news by talking about how good LeBaron Philon is there. But I think Alabama needs that number 2 guy that they can consistently rely on. Amari Allen's been in that spot at points this year. Latrell Wright's been that guy at other points, especially late in the season here. Aiden Holloway's been that guy. You want somebody that you can go to if a team does start to focus too much on LeBaron Philon. And so I think, you've kind of worked through that this season. You've seen other guys kind of step up in those spots. And so figure out kind of who's hot right now heading into the tournament season and roll with those guys here against Auburn on Saturday.
Final game for the Crimson Tide at home coming up on Saturday, Alabama against Auburn. Then it's off to the SEC tournament, NCAA tournament as well. The women's team here in Greenville gearing up for the SEC tournament. Just what can you tell us, Wyatt, about some of the coverage that your station will have coming up for Alabama basketball over the next few weeks, as well as football, baseball, softball, everything that's going on right now on campus?
Absolutely. I've been blessed with an incredible team that has allowed us to cover the many incredible sports there with the University of Alabama. I cover football, men's basketball. I'll travel with the team I'll travel throughout tournament season here as men's basketball reaches the conclusion of their season. We're covering women's basketball as well. We'll have coverage of those games in Greenville and then the NCAA tournament as well. We've got designated writers for baseball and softball, so should be a lot of coverage coming out about the Crimson Tide with everything rocking and rolling here late in spring sports season and then football getting picked back up as well.
Oh, it's an exciting time. Just try and keep Ryan Fowler and Gary Harris especially in line. Can you do that for us?
I'll try my best. Try to keep them reined in, and Christian Miller, I try to talk with him as well from time to time.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about Christian. I'm good on Christian.
Yeah.
So. Well, Wyatt, yeah, you guys do a great job. Again, we love the partnership with the Crimson Tide Sports Network and Tide 100.9. Just thank you for your time and all the best in your travels coming up and covering Alabama football this spring. Thank you.
Stay safe, and thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Carly Weathers, and you're watching Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR.
Fans, there's no better way to experience Alabama basketball than with our live basketball booth cams presented by NASCAR. Streaming live during all Alabama men's and women's basketball home games this season, you'll get a front row seat to all the great reactions from our radio crew as the big plays happen for the Crimson Tide. Make sure you follow us on all your favorite social media platforms at UA_CTSN, especially subscribe on YouTube. That way you won't miss a single basketball booth cam this season. Again, presented by NASCAR for all Alabama men's and women's basketball home games this year.
Go Holloway, a deep three, bottom. Mercy from 30 feet out, dead on. Holloway with 25, and Bama leads it by 14.
From football to women's basketball here in Greenville, South Carolina, Alabama starting play on Wednesday night against the Missouri Tigers. Let's take a look back at some of the great courtside moments that we had in Greenville as Alabama got the win. And then after that, you'll hear from Alabama assistant coach Kelly Curry giving his thoughts on a dramatic victory for the Crimson Tide against the Missouri Tigers.
To Austin, left wing, her three is up and in. Ace Austin, welcome to the SEC tournament. The freshman makes it Alabama 44 and Missouri 37. Scott, top of the key, Carly Weathers, kicks it out. Austin, left corner three is up and in. Heat check for the freshman. Ace Austin with back-to-back three-pointers. What a start to this fourth quarter. Alabama 47, Missouri 37. Basketball with the Tigers now all of a sudden trailing by 10, and a pass is deflected and stolen by Wyatt. Wise Jennings gets the steal. Here's Austin, right side, three up. Once again good! The freshman ace Austin with a trio of three-pointers, and it's Alabama 50, Missouri 37. Timeout Mizzou with 8:34 to go in the fourth quarter. What a performance. Ace Austin, 9 points, all in the last minute plus from Greenville. To Cody on the left baseline. Cody to Austin, left corner three. She's got it again. 4 3-pointers in this fourth quarter for Ace Austin. 12 points at a flash for the freshman. No good on the shot. Diana Collins with the rebound, and she will dribble out the final seconds as the Crimson Tide fans can celebrate in Greenville, South Carolina. Alabama wins its first-round matchup with the Missouri Tigers here at Bon Secours Wellness Arena. Final score from the SEC Tournament first round, Alabama 65 and Missouri 48. Crimson Tide will roll to the second round of this tournament. The matchup tomorrow, 11th seed Alabama against the number 6 seed Tennessee Lady Volunteers at 7:30 p.m. Central. Our radio start time 7:15 for the renewal of one of college sports' great rivalries, Alabama and Tennessee. Coach, thank you for joining us. What a win for Alabama. It seems like different quarters in this ballgame, different players stepped up for your basketball team.
For sure. I think the thing that, for the most part, overall, that was steady was our defense and rebounding. And we needed it on a night that we couldn't throw it in the ocean, for sure. And especially, our starters really struggle shooting the ball. But it's just going to happen sometimes. So hopefully, that's why you want to be able to depend on your defense and your rebounding, and tonight it came through for us.
Really saw that, especially after the third quarter. Alabama's offense only had 10 points in that third quarter, but you come out in the fourth quarter and the first 9 points, all courtesy of your freshman Ace Austin. She makes 4 3-pointers in a row. What'd you see from her getting those open looks and opportunities to score?
Well, we've missed her the last couple of games, and she's really come in and worked hard, and it's been about staying healthy for her, but she's got a great future ahead of us. For her, and sometimes there's something to be said for being a freshman and not know you're supposed to be nervous, and so she came in and gave us a ton of energy, and at a time we needed it. I mean, it was possession by possession game at that point.
It really was. So great performance by her. And then looking at some of the numbers as well, it stands out that Carly Weathers, yes, led you with 6 assists, but also on the boards, 16 rebounds. Alabama an advantage of 12 on the boards. How critical was that in this game?
Well, it was huge. I mean, for us to get 14 offensive rebounds and like you say, out-rebound them by 12, Carly just continued. She's just so important part on and off the floor for our program. And to get, the Scholar Athlete of the Year, what a great honor. And no one could be more deserving than her. But she just gives everything every time she walks out on the floor. Sometimes the shot's not going to go in or out, but she's always going to be there as like a steadying voice and someone that you can depend on to do all the little stuff.
So a great win tonight for Alabama against Missouri, and we've seen it before in this building, in Nashville as well. You get some momentum the more you play in this tournament. What's the key taking some of the good feelings from this game into a tough matchup tomorrow with Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, the way that they play with their style, you got to be able to handle the press. And so you can't, we preach all the time, don't let Alabama beat Alabama. And how you do that, you value the basketball, don't turn it over. You make free throws, you make layups, you box out and rebound. And so we got to do all those things against them, be a lot better. We got to shoot the ball better than we will tonight. But sometimes it's good to have an off shooting night, and then, the next night you're hitting everything you look at. So hopefully it'll be that situation this time, but it with them it's boxing them out, keeping them off the boards, and then handling the press. If we handle the press, we ought to get some good looks.
Well, we'll look forward to it. Alabama against Tennessee coming up tomorrow night. Coach, just all the best with all the film study from this one, the rest in recovery, getting set for Game 2 in as many days. But thank you for your time. Congratulations on the win. Roll Tide.
Appreciate it. Roll Tide.
Hi, I'm Tamia Scott, and you're watching Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR.
Well, best of luck to the women's basketball team coming up later tonight against Tennessee as that game kicks off our look at our upcoming schedule here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Once again, 7:30 the start time for Alabama against Tennessee, and that would also be the start time tomorrow if Alabama wins tonight and takes on the Texas Longhorns on Friday night. Our radio coverage will start at 7:15 across the network for those games. Then it's baseball and softball active over the weekend. The baseball team hosting North Florida at 6 p.m. on Friday, 2 o'clock on Saturday, and then 1 o'clock on Sunday. For Crimson Tide softball, also 6 p.m. start times Friday and Saturday. on the road in Oxford against Ole Miss before the Crimson Tide will finish out their series at 1 o'clock against the Rebels. Then on Hey Coach on Monday nights, it'll be Nate Oates breaking down the SEC tournament ahead for the Crimson Tide. Don't forget Coach Oates and the Crimson Tide on Saturday taking on the Auburn Tigers. Great ball game coming up. 6:30 will be our airtime on the network, and make sure you stay with us post-game as well. We'll have all the senior night festivities for Reitzel as well as Millette and Williamson getting their recognition from the University of Alabama. And then again, Hey Coach will kick off our next week coming up in addition to Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR at 2 p.m. Central on Tuesday and Thursday here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. It's going to wrap up this busy edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, coming to you from Greenville, South Carolina. So as a result, Ethan Carabin back home in Tuscaloosa put this entire show together. Really thank Ethan for his hard work. Appreciate our guest as well, Kelly Curry from Alabama women's basketball, and then Wyatt Fulton at the top of the show. A tremendous breakdown of Alabama football heading into spring practice that begins next week. We're going to be talking more football over the next few weeks as we get ready for A-Day. But here in Greenville, this is Roger Hoover saying thank you for watching this special edition of Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR. We'll see you down the road. Enjoy everything that's coming up. Men's and women's basketball, baseball, and softball. Fun time right now for Alabama fans as we start the first week of March. Until we talk again, roll tide, everyone.
Big hit here from Marley Giles would go a long way to sealing that one. The 2-0. Giles with a fly ball, deep left field. Get out the mustard, the rye bread grandma. It's a grand salami. Marley Giles